Hello. This is devlog number 6. There, finding the number. Devlog number 6 for Project Blue. Project Blue. It has been a minute. I didn't think to say anything about it before in the last video, but I took some time off visiting friends, and then it's also the 4th of July, so the past 2 weeks was actually more like a short week, so this will also be a short video, just to go over it. Things I worked on, I did some scoping for the move sequencer, which is the object I've mentioned in the past that will be responsible for kind of taking in an already parsed input and determining if it can, or like if and what move it should segue into, based on what state the player character is currently in. Did some like very like high level planning for that, and only just barely started like laying the groundwork. But there's not too much really, or nothing really worth showing at this moment in that front. What I did do that's a little more concrete is or a little more visible I should say, is I implemented a second attack, or most of the way anyway. It is a kick. So here's the jab we already had, and here's the kick. I did, looking back at it, or like looking at more frame data for like existing fighting games, Street Fighter again as my example, I definitely realized that this jab is insanely slow. Like this is not realistic at all as far as what you would expect a jab to come out at. This is like slow even by like heavy attack standards. It comes out too slow, and then it has a massive amount of recovery. Like this is like fucking. This would have to be insanely strong in some manner to have any value. Maybe like as like a reset tool, like if you have them in a block string. I might go back and speed it up, and trying to adjust the. I could actually. There is. Let's see, how would I do this? There is a play rate element to this. I don't remember if I have a control set up. Let's see, calculate montage. Yeah, sorry, going on a tangent now, but I want to believe I actually might be able to just fix it on the spot. I didn't really think about it until I was like talking about it here. Okay, execute montage. Okay, so desired frames. Here, and that comes in from here, which I think Manny just calls when we apply a state. Yeah, and so when we apply it, we are passing it in through there, and that probably comes in from the event graph, which I guess I don't have open. Okay, so let's. So this will not really retime everything. Like, the fact of the matter is, like, there's still a lot of recovery frames. And unless I happen to get the proportion right of like wind up, active, and recovery, like this will only accelerate the whole thing and might not actually fix its problems. But let's see. The kick is only about like 18 frames. So let's make the jab maybe like 17 for some variance, but like more or less in the same ballpark. See if this looks right. Okay, so it doesn't actually fix the timing of the hitboxes, which actually it should. That was part of the intention. Oh no, actually, yeah, I just. No. Yeah, I did not actually do that, but that would be viable if I passed the play rate into the hitbox timers. It could act as like a multiplier, and that could adjust like when the active and inactive frames are. So there's something there. And in this case, I think I'm running into an issue where the montage. Why is this happening? I don't know. I'd have to look into it more. I'm destroying the hitboxes as I go, but I'm also destroying it at the end of the montage. So there's probably an instance where the montage is playing so fast that it's trying to delete references that haven't been created yet at all. Like it's trying to delete. Yeah, I think that might be the issue. Like it's trying to delete both hit groups and hitboxes that have not even occurred yet. So there's something to that actually. The jab is more salvageable than I thought. I honestly just didn't think about it until talking through it. Anyway, actual new stuff. So there's a kick. Let's remove this. This is just noise at this point. There is a kick. It doesn't have like proper state priorities being checked, and that's because the move sequencer should be kind of handling that logic in the future, and I shouldn't feel like. I mean, I guess it's as simple as duping it, but either way, it doesn't really matter. So, it also doesn't yet have hit groups. So, whereas the jab will cause like a hit reaction, the kick does not actually collide yet. That's just something I need to work on. So there's that. One thing that's been bothering me, and I think this might be like the actual next thing I do, but it's something that it kept like throwing me off while working on this. Actually, before I go down that, I'll talk about the other thing I did. And that is I cleaned up how the workflow that I always reference when I do animations, how I'm getting those hitboxes and like taking them from the animation into like the data struct that is then being read at, at runtime. So let's see. I'm just gonna hide these. And the only reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to open up a level sequence. You can see now I've kind of broken up animation into some separate folders. There's level sequences, which is kind of like the raw level sequence that is then turned into an animation sequence that is then turned into a montage, and that's what I use when I'm actually running runtime. But I'm also making these secondary ones. I kind of tried it with the standing hit reaction, but if I recall, I kind of like botched the process. And that's actually what I'm referring to now as far as I fixed. The issue before was there is an offset built into BP Manny. If I go into the viewport, if you look at the transform for the mesh, it's actually 92 units down. Reality is like the origin of the big mesh would put it in the middle of the capsule. And so this is like out of the box. I'm pretty sure for Manny. I did not do this. I don't think, unless I forgot. And it probably is just like it's probably just a matter of like capsules feel more appropriate when you're adjusting them by their center, but you need Manny to kind of fit in the capsule, so he has to be offset. This was causing issues before though, where my hitboxes were misaligning. The other thing that I corrected as far as like my process goes is I'm now operating both in runtime for now, tentatively, as well as when I'm doing like the level sequence stuff. I'm now working out of 0, on the grid. I think that was leading to like user errors when I was trying to. I would just have the level sequence like wherever. I would just like plop. I think if I open up the hit react, standing hit reaction. Oh, maybe I did move this one. Although I think this one's oriented 90 degrees. Anyway, the point was, when I was doing this before, some of the level sequences, maybe like one that doesn't have a hitbox actually, like far... these all adjust? Does it just do that? Okay, so here's an example at least. I would just drop the model like kind of any which way, and so then if I look at the details here, like the location is just kind of arbitrary values. And the reason that's kind of awkward is because I'm trying to, in the data struct, where I'm like saving these values, it's over here on the other screen. I'm trying to do like offsets, right? I'm trying to spawn the hitbox relative to Manny, but if the value I'm reading when I'm like doing like testing where the hitbox should land, it's kind of just out in space. It's kind of hard. I've got to like do mental math then when I'm looking at the hitbox value. So basically clean that up. The hitbox now spawns the dummy. Yeah, I also made a separate object here instead of trying to work with the actual hitbox object, just because I can just add a material straight up and not worry about affecting the the dynamic material instance with the right parameters. Although I should probably get more comfortable with that stuff. It should have. I think if I set it up right, it would be an easy thing to do in the level sequencer, and I just didn't want to do it. So I could probably get away with not having this object. But anyway, there's this now dummy material that I'm spawning in the. This is what you see when you're looking at a level sequence that has the hitboxes. So like this. So basically, yeah, this value now, if I open details again, the location, because everything's Manny and the hitboxes are now centered at 0, 0, the location is accurate to what it just goes into the data struct. So yeah, here's it just playing, or I'm not really playing, I'm just dragging it. Let's play it. It looks very jerky. Maybe it's like too fast. But I think it, like I said before, it's a jab, like it's a fast button, it needs to be very fast. It just looks a little spastic when it's, you know, just rapidly firing. Also think, like, if I had to take a step back and reflect on what I'm learning of animation, you know, it's not a skill set that I've really developed prior to this project. I think I've come to the conclusion that this particular animation that I'm doing, this sort of like front kick with like cross arms that kind of offset their center of balance, or like, I guess, correct their center of balance as they kick. This animation is probably too exaggerated for such a fast move. A lot of like jabs and fast kick buttons that I've seen, at least, tend to be just like a little flick of the hand or the foot. Like they're a little less like wind up centric. And that's probably why this looks so jerky, because it's a pretty large amount of motion to be seeing in such a short amount of time. But if I like slow it down to like 0.25 and you just kind of like forget like what the base speed is, I think this actually looks pretty good. I'm actually quite proud of like the animation itself. I just probably picked the wrong choreography for the speed. So yeah, yeah, and so this is actually like a pretty decent demo of also like now you've got this level sequence. It's not just in the runtime, but like it's drawing the hitboxes that will be then used in game. The second one is just the actual hitbox, not the hurt boxes that the rest of these are. They're not colored because it doesn't really matter as long as I'm aware, as long as I know. This is really nice too because it's not like the best as far as tooling the hitboxes, but let's say I do decide to like maybe change the animation or something, but I want to kind of keep the spirit. Like it's still front kick, but maybe I'm not doing this thing where they like kick their foot, like what are you gonna say, like raise their knee way up into their chest and then buck it out. Maybe they just do a little like a faster little soccer kick or something. I might use some of these frames the same, but I might also remove or reduce a lot of them. Now because I have this reference to like, I can click on this and I can look at the values, and I'm like, okay, I'm on frame 5, and it's a hitbox that has a X location of 50. The process for like finding that value, I need to open the table again. The process for finding this value now is a little better than it was before. So like I just said, it was on frame 5. So there's nothing that actually hard sets the data, but I try to make it so that the frame that it becomes active is the order in which they're entered. So index 2, I've got a frame 3 active, so that's too early. Frame 4, frame 4, frame 5, but the X location offset is 11, so that's probably this one back here if I had to guess. We'll just click it actually. Yeah, 11. 11, 121 is the Z offset, 121 is over here. So that's not the right one, but it's on the right frame. 7, 116, 16. Oh, sorry, I forgot what the value was. 50? Am I wrong? Did I not order this correctly? Oh wait, I should. Okay, so I said the frame it goes active, but I didn't actually confirm when this goes active. Let's see. It might not be on frame 5. 3. Okay, so 3 is like where it's conformed to this shape. Okay. So yeah, already I'm showing you where the user errors can crop up with this pattern, but it's better than what I had before, which was sort of like if I wanted when I was like adjusting or working around the jab animation, if I wanted to change the hitbox, I had to kind of think really hard about like, okay, this one is what is this like 100 by 100? That's a pretty wide one, so it's probably you know as an example, right? It's probably this one. I'll just bump it up 10 and then I'll hit play, go into runtime, and then I'll see how it looks. Now I have like a little bit more of a procedure where I can sort of pin down the data struct without like just haphazardly guessing, and I can then in the level sequence actually adjust it here, so I can be like, oh look, his shoulder's barely sticking out. If I really wanted to, I don't, but if I really wanted to, I could do like 0.55. I could widen it, and then I could drag it back like, whoops, I meant to go positive 48. And I can see there's still a line there, so maybe not 48, maybe 49. And now the seam is pretty much gone. That seam didn't really matter though either. There's no hitbox I'm going to make that it's so thin that it could fit between those. But, I think it looks cleaner this way. But yeah, let's not do that. I forget what this value was. It was this ugly one. Probably in the future, and also try and make my scales and locations cleaner numbers, just because I think that's easier to think about, and I think the unit's so small that I don't need to be picture perfect and use these types of decimals. It's just an outcome of me using the actual drag tool. I could probably turn on snapping, and that would help me too. But anyway, so this process is a fair bit more streamlined. It still has some cumbersome. Some cumbersome in the gears of it. I don't know if there's an easy way for me to do it without actually making a proper tool, because I'm sort of just working with Unreal to kind of. I want to call it diagram, but that's not the right word. Kind of make a mock version and then putting it into data, so it could just be referenced and called. Let's see. Research time. Yeah, otherwise, like I said, there's some backend, very, very minor backend stuff I'm looking into as far as how they convey what moves next. You might have noticed that there's a sequential moves thing, or value here that's off of the move data or state data table. I think it should be an array, but I was just thinking of putting some strings in here to reference the row names. So you'd kind of have a lookup table sort of built into this. I was going back and forth on whether or not it should be a genuinely separate table, or if it should just be an additional field on the move. I laid it on additional field for now, but I'm not super committed just yet, so that might be something I change my mind on. And yeah, the goal with that is to get a really basic implementation of canceling probably jab into the kick move. Just because the jab has so much recovery right now, it would be an easier indicator or test of whether or not you could cancel the move. Yeah, let's see what else. Oh yeah, I was starting to say, and then I cut myself off because I wanted to talk about the actual hitbox changes. So you notice that I have two windows. Let's close this. I've got two windows for Unreal right now. I've got this kind of the orthographic side view, and then I've got my kind of perspective camera that just floats around. I think as far as developing the game, I'm always going to want to have this rightmost view because it's straight on from the right, and it's exactly it's a very good indicator of where the hitbox actually is. I don't need to question it. Whereas if I'm floating around, I'm going to slightly misalign. But when I'm in the game, it's also pretty bad. Let's close the level sequence. That's not the one I want. You run. Okay, so you might have noticed I'm actually going to make this super wide. you might notice that the hitbox is not the greatest indicator when you're in this view, simply because there is a field of view being applied to the camera lens. And I don't know exactly what all controls I have on this front, but when you look at like a fighting game, and they do have like hitboxes turned on, it's typically a bit easier to tell where stuff actually is relative to the model, what the hitboxes are, I should say. So like right now, if I go far to the left, and you look at my character's right leg, the one that's in the back, it's now at this point where the perspective is like such that it's hard to kind of tell where the actual hitbox it lies in relation to it. You might just think, well, obviously the hitbox or the leg is in the hitbox, right? So that should be like self-explanatory. But that's not always the case. If you look at like a lot of fighting game hitboxes and hurtboxes, they tend to be not as intuitive as you'd think, because balance is, tightly constrained to those hitboxes, and the animations can't always be like adjusted to fit those. It's like very like much one gets fine-tuned, the other one gets made, and then ideally never touched again, like just because it's a lot of effort to make a good animation. And so the issue that I'm kind of trying to demonstrate is that based on where I am on the screen, it becomes it wildly changes how the hitbox appears to align with the model. When you're in the orthographic view, and of course I closed level sequence, so now it's not here. When you're in the orthographic view, there's no question, right? Like that's the point. It's perfectly from the right, and so you can see each and every frame, and you can see like for instance the toe sticks out, but that's fine because I don't want to like extend a ton of hitbox or hurtbox area, and I also don't want to like capture every little pixel on its own. I think this is like fine, but you can see it like you can see pretty cleanly where these values are, and that's just not the case in this. So one thing I really want to do, like this is probably like top of mind, I want to maybe do this next before I even do the move sequencer stuff, is I want to see if I can mess with like the camera field of view, because this is also just something that like even if you don't see hitboxes, this kind of interferes with your perspective of like how close characters are to each other. Like it's a very minor thing, but it can really like it has an effect on like game feel. So this is definitely something I'm going to be looking at. Yeah. So that's probably like my shortest term goal. Shorter to mid-term is that level sequencer, even just like a basic implementation. I still need to decide like how I want to do inputs and such, but that'll be its own object that'll feed into the sequencer. And then from there, I'm probably before the input reading stuff, but after the sequencer, I think what I want to focus on next is some of the just like fundamental aspects of the fighting game that I've kind of been, that I am just lacking currently. There's no pushback. I can't even demo it because that character's in the way. There's no pushback. The character just kind of flinches, and we're at the same distance, and that's like no good. There should be some health. There should be like my character should be turning relative to the enemy character, not just arbitrary point. It wouldn't hurt to have a few more animations that are going to be necessary. No jumping. There's no back walk. There's no blocking. Blocking is something. So yeah, basically there's a lot that I want to touch that I think I should prioritize. I think maybe I might have lost the forest for the trees here, focusing on the level sequencer. I think that was just one of the more complex bits, and I was sort of like one part excited, one part anxious about it, so I jumped into that. But I really should try and get a solid like set of foundations. So like even if there's only 2 attacks, you could actually play it as a fighting game, right? So yeah. And that more or less that's my roadmap, we'll say, for now. As always, thank you for watching. I will get back into like the weekly cadence. This was just a nice little vacation, and I'm glad to be working on this again. Take care.